Hey y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and today I have a Bible journal process video for you. I am working in the book of Exodus actually, and I am looking at many places in Exodus, but where I'm going to journal is in Exodus 34, where God has been setting up all of the festivals. He has been designing and giving Moses the instructions for the rhythm of life, the harvest, the festivals that always kind of surround the different harvests for the Israelites. And I'm going to reflect on that. It has to do with a sermon and a sermon series that we've been having at church. So that is why I want to do this and get a few notes down. And I hope you'll join me for it. So I will link everything that I use down below. I'll also link the sermon in case you want to check it out. Otherwise, let's go. All right, so I am working on the background of this page in a fun way. I started my day by walking my 14-year-old beagle and just appreciating the beauty of all of the colorful leaves around me. And so I picked up a few of the leaves. These are not so colorful, these particular ones, but I picked them up for their shape. And I'm doing an old school kind of leaf rubbing. So I have some colored pencils and I'm getting the impressions of the leaves in the background. I remember doing this back in elementary school. I loved it then. I love it now. There is something so satisfying about this. So I had several different colors that I had picked out, and I'm just using these to create a background on this page. Now, I am documenting a sermon series that we are having in church that is all about food. It's actually about food in the Bible, and it's called Taste and See. And our pastor started out by telling us that food is mentioned more than 1,200 times in the Bible. It's something that I hadn't really noticed or thought of, but it is interesting once you start to look at it. And he is connecting food to our dependence on God, because God could have created us in any number of ways, and he chose us to need food and to look to him and his creation for food, and how God desires us to really just be dependent on him in so many ways, but food is definitely one of those ways. And when you look at these 7 different festivals that are talked about throughout Exodus, you start to see that they all revolve around the harvest of some sort, either the planting or the harvest. And of course, there's different seasons of harvest. And we discussed in church how really God set up this rhythm of life. And in today's society, when we can get any food almost anytime we want it, we don't necessarily wait for things to be in season. We have electricity that has our lights on at all times of the day and night. We don't have to kind of pay attention to the sun. We at times can fall out of the rhythm of life that God has set up for us. And that's what I'm reflecting on as we kind of start this new harvest season. We come into November, into Thanksgiving, and I want to be thankful for not only all the abundance of the season, but just the rhythm of life that God has set up. And I want to align my heart with that rhythm. So I have my background done. I have some beloveds pulled out, and then this is some gorgeous fabric. That's actually Tim Holtz fabric. I love it. I picked it up in Kansas when I was there for the Illustrated Faith Creative Team Retreat, and I'm creating a fun ruffle that I'm going to kind of fuss with here for a bit, but then cut off a section that will be a ruffle at the bottom of my page as kind of the anchor for a beloved. I was going to do a group of beloveds, but I decided I'm just going to stick with one just so I have a little bit more room to play on the page. And the thought of the rhythm of life and being in rhythm with the earth, it sometimes felt a little bit, I don't know, you might say like touchy-feely for me, but it really is true. God established these rhythms, and I have been struggling finding a rhythm recently. And so I thought this was just such a good point in the sermon and a good thing for me to reflect on. So now I've just pulled out all kinds of goodies, you guys. I have the background. I like the background. There were some colors that jumped out a little bit too much, which is why I'm bringing in some of those burlap flowers to cover up some of those sections. And I'm working with vintage pieces. So I have my ephemera grouped in several different groups, one of which is vintage, one of which is fall. And so I pulled out those 2 kind of bins of ephemera, and I'm seeing what I can put together from this grouping to have my beloved here. She's the anchor on my page. We'll have a few of these fall leaves coming in and out, and I like how it plays. All the different textures are really what I'm enjoying on this page. The burlap, the stamp, the colored pencil rubbings in the background. I just think it makes for a really interesting look. And of course, this particular Beloved Society girl with her bright blue hair, I think goes really well, and she kind of pops off the rest of the page. For all of the fabric and the burlap elements on the page, I'm actually using Fabri-Tac glue to adhere those. I love using Fabri-Tac glue because it's a strong adhesion. It dries pretty fast. It doesn't soak through the page, like it doesn't cause a grease stain of any sort on the other side of the page. You can see struggle, just a little bit, struggle bus getting that on. But it's a great way to add some of these elements, some of these more 3D dimensional elements to your Bible, and especially anything fabric related. I'm going to cut this one in half because I only had a few of these burlap pieces left and I want to use it in a few other parts of the page. Yes, it ends up covering up a bunch of the rubbings that I did on the back. I don't mind. Again, we're just playing with textures, we're playing with elements, and when you start to do a more mixed media feel, you have to be okay with building up layers and changing up those layers. It has to be something that you're willing to go with, because as you start in your Bible journal, in your art journal, whichever it is, as you start working with layers, that's got to be something that you are willing to play with, because that's when you get the really, really cool effects of building those layers. All right, so once all of those get put down on the page, I kind of struggle with the positioning because I didn't want all the leaves facing the same direction. So once all of those get put on the page, then you can see that I have some alpha stickers pulled out that are yellow, and that's going to be my title on the page. I had a little trouble getting those to stick down as well on top of the burlap. So I did end up picking up Fabri-Tac to just make sure they were really secure. Anytime fabric is involved in the adhesive process, then I definitely want to bring in the Fabri-Tac. Okay, I'm building my title backwards, which you can see why I wrote out the word rhythm. That's a hard word for me to spell anyway, and then spelling it backwards, I was like, I need to see it letter for letter to make sure I spell this thing correctly. I often build my titles backwards, and I always struggle making sure I spell everything correctly. So letter by letter, I had to have it written out. That's what I wanted to see. You can see my sermon notes over there. Those are printables that my church offers us, printable notes that we can refer back to. And then oftentimes I take notes during the sermon myself, but I love having these printable ones that I can refer back to. And oftentimes there's some extended reading, some more verse references, things like that, so that you can reflect on the sermon throughout the week. Okay, once the title is set, I was thinking that my beloved's hair was sticking out a little bit, and I wanted to bring some of that color throughout. Not quite as vibrant, but I have the same colored pencil I used for the rubbing, and I'm just going to add some little art marks. I did some little upward arrow kind of looking pieces, and I'm going to just add art marks throughout the page. It adds to the mixed media feel to me. It brings that color throughout the page because I was feeling like it was lacking a little bit. So I like using art marks to move color around and move your eye around the page also. Then I will just add my prayer where I write, Lord, may my life align with the rhythms that you created to help us flourish. And that is going to be it for this Bible journal process. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider hitting that subscribe button as well as the bell notification button. I will link supplies down below in the description box so you can find those if you're interested. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members. We are having such a great time. There's a lot of great things happening over on Patreon. I really urge you to go check it out. There is a tier for everybody, so make sure to check that out in the description box below as well. All right, I hope that you have an absolutely fabulous day, and as always, keep it creative.